Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and a butterfly came out.
Well, and in the context of the joke, it's always like I think it's like I've heard it different ways, but I think it's like two tall beers and like two shots of like I don't know, like airline liquor or something like ridiculous. I've heard different versions of it, and you got to like slam it on. And there's like another version where like
Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Eric Leja. Eric, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, my name is Eric Leja. I'm a writer. I live in Los Angeles with my family. I'm from Chicago originally. Um, I don't know. I sort of took a very convoluted way to get to Hollywood. Took a detour through the military, and then I took my GI Bill to film school. Then I came out to LA with nothing but a busted Honda and a trunk full of dreams, and I started working as a PA, which turned into AD work, which turned into other work, and then yada yada. Now I write, and that's mostly what I do.
Very cool, very cool. I'm assuming you have a lot of comedic experiences in the military. How, if I can ask, how long ago did you get out?
Oh, well, I guess it's been a while. I got out in 2008, so I did 4 years in the Marines. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I always liked cracking jokes and stuff, and I kind of found, being in very dangerous situations and like how like like a little bit of some humor, whether gallows humor or being silly, kind of keeps people going. And whether it was like us guys cracking jokes, like in the trenches, or like throwing on like a South Park DVD or a Scrubs DVD to keep the morale up, and that's kind of what led me to comedy. And I should have said this in my intro, but I dabble in stand up. I was doing stand up fairly regularly, and then my son was born, and so now I had to kind of take it. I can't go out every night, doing mics and stuff, but I also dabble in that kind of thing as well. So
Awesome. Well, that's the whole point of the podcast. So, are you ready to get started?
yeah, let's go.
Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. All right, so the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who is a funny person telling any jokes. So
Okay.
Eric, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Yes, I think so. I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so ready for the first question?
Yes.
All right, so it's about the role of persona in comedy. So, how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
Um, I think that kind of depends on the comedian because some use like well, I think in everybody there's at least a little bit of yourself in the voice, right? And then some people that's their whole thing is just like their like them being that like a comedian that goes up and talks about their day and they'll elaborate or exaggerate a little bit, but it's their life, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then there's some comedians that get up there and they tell a completely fictionalized story, and so but it's based on a nugget of truth. So I guess like it varies on everybody. There's at least a little bit though in everybody. At least
Okay.
it's good.
So, does authenticity matter or is illusion part of the magic?
I think I think it needs to be grounded in authenticity and illusion. Like the best thing is when it's an illusion built on it's on authenticity, right? Like so like for an example, like Bill Burr complaining about traffic in LA. Like I know Bill Burr is wealthy enough to have a helicopter, and he does, right? But traffic in LA sucks, and those are funny observations. So like that story that Bill Burr might be telling might not be real. He might be just embellished. Maybe he took a helicopter to the studio today because he's a rich guy now. But he knows what that's like because he comes from a working class world, so he can speak to that and bring that authenticity to it, even though there might be a lot of illusion in it. And I feel like that's kind of how. Like that's the best. And if it's all illusion, you can kind of tell, right? Like if you watch a TV show, what was that? It was some. I won't name the show, but there was a show where it was supposed to be, or you know what? A perfect example is like Friends, how they're all supposed to be, like working class folks, and they have these giant apartments in New York with these giant plates of food for every meal. So that kind of makes it. You're not going to look at Friends as like a gritty, realistic thing, right? So. You kind of got to be aware of illusion versus authenticity, I guess. Kind
So
of.
that kind of drives me to ask this question as a reversal. So if you start with illusion and then add or sprinkle authenticity at the end, does that not just create self-consciousness?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess if you I guess I'm trying to think like I guess you could do it either or, right? Like if you start off with this wildly crazy thing, and then you add the authenticity at the end when you where you ground it at the end. Um, I guess it's just a different way of telling the story or a different way of presenting it. But I think the audience does crave. We need to know. You can put something in outer space, right? Like if you like, I've never been to outer space. I probably never will. But like if you put, I don't know, the astronaut is trying to impress the other astronaut because he has a crush on her or whatever. I understand what that's like, right? So uh like that kind of thing, or human conflict on Mars. We don't know what Mars is like, but we know what human conflict is. So whether it's the beginning or the end or whatever, I think there needs to be some authenticity in the illusion for it to track.
All right, all right, all right. So punching up versus punching down. So where do comics versus comedians stand on this? And let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Hmm, that's interesting. I think I feel like punching down is something. I think comedians and comics do it, and like that's the whole thing. Is like that line is like the tough line to toe, right? Because you want to make fun of things and people and stuff, but you don't want to punch down. You want to make fun of people that are already getting made fun of, that like the powers that be are kind of already like oppressing or whatever, right? But you also want to find something common to make people laugh. Like I was thinking about punching up, punching down, and like a really good example of like of towing that line is when South Park had those episodes where they had all the kids with disabilities, and it was like really funny, and they were like using these kids, and like some people were laughing at the wrong stuff, but a lot of people that I've heard about that like have disabilities or have children with disabilities really appreciated being included, right? And like it's because like these kids with disabilities, like them stuttering and stuff wasn't the whole joke. Like them having these little adventures at this summer camp in this episode was like the gag and the joke. So like that's a good example of like taking a group that's typically punched down upon in comedy but punching up with them because we're all like laughing with them, they're part of the joke with us. But like punching down is like just getting on stage and like saying a bunch of racist jokes for no reason. And you can do racist humor, like I said, like it's like you could be racial humor that's inclusive, that's sort of making fun of, like, celebrating our differences. But when you start critiquing a difference in a culture, like that's when it becomes punching down. And I think comics and comedians should avoid that because it's lazy and
Beady,
it
beady, beady,
like,
beady.
like that prince you mentioned, he sounds like a dickhead. Like this prince, he's got the whole kingdom and everything. He's going to be the king someday. Why does he got to kill the jester? The jester's just doing his thing. You know what I mean? So, I feel like punching down bad, punching up good. And comedians and comics should strive to do the up one and not the down one.
So that does kind of that gives me an idea, perhaps, of a way that you can get everyone on your side and then punch down. I know it sounds weird, but if you say the prince actually is part of royalty, what if he tells the rest of the court that, hey, we're all comedians, we're all jesters. Who's this guy? And then kind of lops his head off. And
Yeah, yeah.
so, right? So that's a different take on. I don't know how that would play back then, but maybe that's a way to kind of gear it, towards being an inclusive punching down,
No,
if that
you're
makes
right. And when
sense.
you when you that's a thing, and I'm sure you in your experience as well as a being on stage and stuff and doing stand up. Like, and that's a big stand up thing is like you could get away with a lot more if you make fun of yourself. Like if you include yourself in the punch down, you could get away with a lot. You could like roast yourself, like, oh, I look silly in this, I'm doing this and this, and then you could be like, but look at these people, and it's sort of like that's when it becomes like sort of an inclusive roast fest instead of you sitting on your high or judging, right? Then that's when I think you could take the audience with you, um, to do that, and then it's more fun. And it's and there's also a thing where you can punch down. You could like do like if you're making fun of like a group of people, but your bit is that you're ignorant, so you're really making fun of yourself. That's another thing too that people do that I think works. So the prince would be like, like I don't know, he would have to say something like, "Oh, I'm so special, important, and blah blah blah," and then he makes it seem like killing the jester is just this ignorant, egotistic driven thing, and everyone would laugh. So.
Well, that's so maybe if it's a group activity, that might make it make more sense. So,
Yeah.
would you say that the audience agreement with the comedian's a form of permission or alignment?
I mean, there's a line, and I think, yeah, actually, that's a really good way to put it because I think that is true. Like when you show up to a show or you put something on TV, you're giving the comedian permission to sort of like to do some funny stuff. But I feel like also the comedian needs to treat that permission with like respect, right? So like you're gonna like you show up like you're doing stand up and like the front row is being silly, you want to riff with them, like you could start roasting the front row. But if you start getting, you got to you have a responsibility with that, right? Like you have the power, like the Spider-Man thing, great power comes great responsibility. You're on stage, everyone's listening to you. So I could like make this person's night or ruin it, right? Like I could say this person has a silly hat, like, oh, you look like, I don't know, you look like you're a Ringling brother. Like, why do you have a top hat? Like, blah blah blah. That's funny, the stuff. But if I start calling this person ugly or say, oh my God, this dude is so fat. When was the last time you went to the gym? And then I ruined that person's night. You know what I mean? And that's like way punching down and being mean for no reason. And people might laugh because, you're delivering it funny. But yeah, I feel like you get permission, so you got to be careful with the permissions that you get.
All right, treat them well. So, cultural translation of comedy. So, how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Ha! Well, I think that's the thing. Like comedy is the hardest thing to like sell overseas, right? Like you could do action and horror because explosions and ghosts translate all languages and cultures, but comedy is like the hardest one. I hear that all the time when I'm trying to sell stuff or write stuff, and especially nowadays when you got to like think about an international market whenever you're trying to sell anything. It's like comedy's like it's not going to play, whatever, and it's because everything's different, right? Like the French have goofy comedy, the Germans have dry comedy, the British have like weirdly dry, goofy comedy, right? And then you have all these like different like cultural references that you're not gonna get in different cultures and stuff. So I think that's like the biggest reasons why it might like something they'll play in America that'll bomb in Tokyo or something. Just because it's not like the cultural like there's cultural back. I mean, a good example like people often a good joke that I hear often is like the drink called an Irish car bomb, and that's like offensive to order in Ireland. People are like, well, can you imagine if that'd be like going to America and ordering a 9/11? But Americans are like, we're pretty self-depreciating, so like we would order and drink the shit out of a 9/11 drink, right? So like that's a pretty good example. Is like we're like America's culture is a little more self-depreciative, or it's maybe a little more I don't know, a little more gallowsy humor in the post 9/11 era, whereas other cultures might not be like that. And then you've got language barriers, of course. So I think that all leads to it.
So, is there a 9/11 drink?
Well, and in the context of the joke, it's always like I think it's like I've heard it different ways, but I think it's like two tall beers and like two shots of like I don't know, like airline liquor or something like ridiculous. I've heard different versions of it, and you got to like slam it on. And then there's like another version where like I don't know, you got to like slam it on. And then there's like you slam it all and you spill one in Pennsylvania or something like that. Like it gets really dark.
Got
Um,
it.
but yeah, so yeah, I don't know, slam two tall PBRs and take a shot, and that's a drink.
All right, that would make sense. So, would you say that comics are more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, because I guess because jokes are universal, and so like specific, like so, like I guess like a comedian would probably be specific to their, the region that they're catering to, and I imagine like the best comedians and stuff could have multiple regions, multiple bits and sets for different regions if they're familiar enough with it. I've seen a really good
That's
like no,
Yeah, I was going to say that's my point is they're more familiar with it personally, right? Because the comedian tends to be more about their personal experience. And so if
Mhm.
they've actually had that personal experience in that environment, then it would be more culturally specific. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, no, totally, totally. And that's how you can, yeah. It's, I mean, yeah. You nailed it.
That
Try to
was an
expand
easy
on it, but
question.
yeah, you nailed. Yeah, that's an easy one. So
All right, how about crowd work versus crafted work? So if comics riff like influencers in the comments section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
I don't know. And that's an interesting question because when I started I wrote stand-up and jokes for a while. I finally started getting on the stage in like 2019 and then did that for a couple years. And then, the pandemic and having a child kind of derailed that. And now I'm looking to get back into it and crowd work, even like the crowd work is so big now for everybody. You kind of like have to do it. And I like watching crowd work, but I don't like doing it. I prefer to craft a narrative and deliver it. And, if a heckler chimes in, riff a little bit or something, but I don't like for me personally, because I'm not good at it. I don't like the crowd work stuff. And I don't know where that line is because it seems like there used to be a fine, like a big line between it. It was like the crafted thing is one art form and the crowd work is another art form. And now it seems like you need to be able to do both and you need to jump between the two, whether you're a comic or comedian. It just seems like it to me like that's what the market wants. It seems like you do crowd work to get those like little bits that go on Facebook and go viral, and then they tune into your crafted special. So it seems like those worlds are melding a lot more now.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it on the head there with the business aspect is how do you keep your crafted material authentic? Like no one's heard it before, but yet advertise what you're about to do, right? And that's what the crowd work. So
Yeah, yeah.
what happens when a comic leans too much into crowd work?
I think that I think that that becomes their thing, and they like lose the ability to, um, yeah, like to have like a crafted special and to just sit there. And that was like the whole beauty of like stand up is like you're recreating that like we're all on my porch or in the basement riffing and so you recreate that or a bonfire. You recreate that like communal space with the stories you tell and whatnot. And so. You kind of like if you're just doing crowd work and you get too much into it and you're no longer recreating that communal space. Now it is just like it's almost like a debate at that point because you're like everyone show up and yell things to me and I'll react and give my point of view. You know what I mean? So I feel like if you lean too much in the crowd work, that's what you become. You become more of a less of a storyteller show up and I'm going to tell you this funny, scary, sad story, and more of a hey, let's all show up and yell at me, spit at me, tell me shit, and I'm gonna react. You know what I mean? Like it becomes a different type of art at that point.
All right. So, very important question advertising and self promotion. So, who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or just those three? How about that? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
Huh? That's a tough question because I wonder if it's like possible to like quantify like how much you promote yourself. I guess like from my experience, it feels like comics and comedians have less of a public persona that's not a performance, whereas like magicians, I'm just thinking about like, people in the industry and magicians seem to have like they have like a public persona that's like them, like a real person, and then you go to their show. Whereas I feel like all of like the social media of comics and comedians is promoting their stuff. So maybe comics and comedians promote it more. And also that might also be like because of like venue, right? Like if you're a magician that's your thing. People know you're gonna get magic and they're gonna hire you for this, and you could go to like a magic show and you do all these things and blah blah blah. Whereas a comic and comedian, you're sort of, I guess maybe the hustle's a little bit more different because you're trying to get people to come to your stand-up, you're trying to get people to buy your clips, you're trying to, I mean, almost every comedian and comic that I know is either trying to sell a TV show or write on a TV show or do their own thing. So maybe like comics and comedians do a lot more self-promo because they have to over magicians. And I don't know who does it more between a comic and comedian. I feel like, um, yeah, it's a tough one.
All right. So is self-promotion necessary, or is it seen as selling out?
I think that it's very necessary, especially as someone in the business. Like you need to, no one's going to promote you. The market is so saturated with people, and you're competing against, I mean, you're competing against like people that have bajillions of dollars. Like you're competing against like, I mean, I love Kevin Hart, but like as a comedian, I have to compete like whether it's a stand-up gig I'm doing or a script I'm trying to get sold, like I have to compete against Kevin Hart. You know what I mean? He has bajillion dollars and like all this A-lister access and I don't. So I need to like, promote myself. Um and so yeah, I think self-promotion, like you're not selling out. I mean, I guess you could be because I guess it depends on your thing. Like if you're just like if you're a lumberjack and you're kind of funny and you like doing that, then I guess getting on Facebook and telling people to come to your forest and hear you talk would be selling out for you. But if you're trying to do this and for a living and make money doing it, or even just enjoy it and you want to speak to a crowd and not like three people, you gotta self-promote. You gotta. Whoever says that selling out, that's silly. That's not selling out. Or if it's selling out, then I don't know what to tell you. You gotta, I don't know. You gotta sell out these days, I guess.
All right, censorship and offense. So does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
I don't know. I guess, um, I guess it kind of depends on like the different style of it. That's a toughie. That's a toughie. Because I feel like that's another one of those lines, sort of like punching up and down, where you're trying to do the right thing and stuff. Like that's sort of, I guess that's in the same vein as that, because you're trying to like, because there's people that do avoid it at all costs. Like there's like comics that avoid it at all costs, especially comics that do like a lot of corporate gigs, right? Like they're not gonna like they don't want to be the raunchy, offensive person. They want to get jobs saying jokes that you could tell in front of your kids because they want to get hired to do that. And then you got people that their whole shtick. I mean, look at Anthony Jeselnik. Like that's his whole
Hmm.
shtick is being as offensive as possible, and he's really good at it, and it's really funny, and he's so good at it that like I feel like he's not gonna offend anybody because you know what you're getting into with him, right? Whereas if a random comic kind of just took his material, you'd be like, why are you talking about dead kids? You know what I mean? Like you probably would be offensive if Kevin Hart started like joking about cancer patients the way Anthony Jeselnik does, people would be like, what are you doing? Whereas Anthony Jeselnik has established himself. So I guess I don't know where the difference in comic and comedian is in that aspect. Um, but yeah, that's my answer. That's my long, winded answer.
Well, that's no, it's a good point. So do you think maybe like Jeselnik, he's tapping into your mental space as he's telling the joke because his are, well, they're technically funny and he wants to make sure you understand that. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, I do, and I think that that's a skill. And like to go back to like the stand up is the illusion of like you just bullshitting with your friends and on the porch. There's a lot of things that you say with the friends that you're not going to say in the workplace. You're not going to say it in front of your spouse or your parents. And Anthony Jeselnik, and it's hard to toe that line because some of those things that you riff at your friends, there's like a trust there, like. I don't know. Think about like a black guy and a white guy who are really good friends, and they could joke about each other's race because they trust each other. Like, I know you're my buddy, but a white comedian saying those jokes to that black guy, he doesn't trust him, so that's gonna like cross a line. And so Jeselnik's really good at building that trust and saying like, I'm gonna say the jokes about cancer patients that you say to your friends when no one's listening. I'm gonna do it on a stage so you can enjoy it in this context, and I'm gonna deliver it in a way that makes sense. And you know that I don't love cancer, but I'm going to deliver it in this way that replicates like you and your friends, and it's brilliantly done.
Got it. So in other words, are you saying that he's taking those jokes, those private, racist, bad jokes that aren't actually told in a funny way, and he makes them funny so that
Yeah,
everyone can enjoy it?
I think he does that really well, and part of it is like his personal, like that he kind of like sometimes he delivers it where it's like it's his opinion and he's like, I'm creepy for thinking this, but it's funny, you know? Like I think he
Mhm.
does. He takes those things that we're not allowed to say in public and he couches them in a format that lets us laugh at them, which is why I think he's so popular and so good at it. And it's a really hard thing to do, you know,
Yeah.
like messing with that kind of edgy material in a way that does it well. Like he's really good at that.
Just to touch on it one last time, would you agree that he's actually calling you out, saying that you have these thoughts, but you refuse to even share them, or if you do, it's only in private?
Yeah, I think there's an element to that. And I think that's what makes it funny, right? Is like he's like there's an element to like when he's like, I'm weird, so I'm gonna say this, but you're laughing because you're weird too. You know what I mean? Like there is a
Right.
little bit of that for
All
sure.
right. So then, who survives better in the cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
Hmm. That's an interesting question as well. I feel like the cancel culture, so like I have like I don't know, like feel like coming up in comedy in this era, you kind of have to be aware of cancel culture. And there's like a weird thing where some people will use cancel, like they'll say being canceled just as like shorthand for saying like, oh, I'm gonna get in trouble for this or I'm gonna cause some controversy for this. But like truly getting canceled is when you anger your own fans and so they stop buying your stuff and then you're canceled, right? Like that's what really being canceled is. Like the Dixie Chicks. They were like they said some shit about George Bush and to a very like patriotic, like right-leaning fan base, they got canceled. They never worked again. Like Dave Chappelle, when he was doing like the trans jokes, he didn't piss off his portion of the audience that laughs at that. He pissed off a large portion of the audience that thought that was offensive. And he was never really canceled. He just kind of lost that chunk that I think he thought of himself as in that sort of like liberal chunk. And so I think when he lost that chunk of the audience, he got angry that he lost that and kind of doubled down a little bit. So um I feel like yeah, that's what I would define being canceled as. And I guess in that space, the mudslinger is like thriving in that. Like the more people that they piss off, the better that they do to a certain other people, right? And so I mean, I guess in that context, like is at that point, are you even getting canceled? Like if your whole shtick is pissing off I've seen like jokes from both sides. I've seen people say jokes that will piss off liberals and people say jokes that will piss off conservatives with the intention of getting the other side to share them on social media. And I've seen jokes from both genres of that aren't necessarily funny, but pissing off the other side is what makes them funny and shareable, right? And so like the mudslinger in that world, I guess, kind of benefits from that. Magician, when I think of a magician, I don't really think of like I don't really think of them like, but if you tell me like a comedian got canceled or a comic got canceled, I would be like, oh, they must have said an offensive joke or something. If you say a magician got canceled, I'm like, what, did they really saw the woman in half? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what I would
Yeah.
think about in that context. I feel like magicians are a little bit more safer from that because they're just typically not delving in that kind of edge. And then comedians and comics, I guess, is just you just gotta kind of navigate it, right? Like, I guess comedians are sort of got to tailor their material to avoid pissing off their own audience because that's what gets it canceled. When the people that buy tickets stop buying tickets, that's what gets it canceled. If people that are not going to buy tickets are that we're never going to buy your tickets anyway, and they're complaining about you on Twitter, that's not getting canceled. That's just free press, right?
Right.
So yeah, I guess that's my answer to that question.
Yeah. So it's like when if a magician does crowd work, brings someone on stage and does kill them, then of course they're going to get canceled, right?
Yeah, they'll be super canceled. They're going to go to canceled for
Right.
20 minutes life canceled.
So would you say that Dave Chappelle is Jessel necking the woke?
Um, yeah, although. See, I'm like, as a comedian, obviously Dave Chappelle is one of the greats. For me, it is a little bit disappointing to kind of see him. It feels less intentional than the Jeselnik stuff, whereas Jeselnik is like, I'm gonna go out and say some wild shit and see who laughs, and I'm gonna do it in a way that'll make you laugh. Seems like Dave Chappelle sort of like told a bunch of jokes about a group of people, and it all kind of stemmed from that one show that he did in like San Francisco, where he like told a bunch of trans jokes. It kind of went viral because people were pissed about it. They felt like it was punching down, and instead of like sort of like crafting, I feel like he could have crafted it in a better way and kept that material and crafted it in a different way or something. It seemed like he kind of doubled down and was like, I'm getting all you people angry. I'm going to continue to make you people angry because I'm angry that you're angry at me. So I would not say that he's necking the woke. Um,
I just like to say you're jezel necking the woke. It's like,
it's more. I feel like it's less intentional than that, but he's definitely. I feel like he's definitely at this point like pushing buttons and stuff. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. I feel like he's like,
yeah, just trying to do your thing, right?
yeah.
Okay. So, Eric, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
Let's go.
All right. So, board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. So, if comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Mm, very interesting. I think maybe the Foley artist. Yeah, doing sounds, doing
All
some
right.
yeah, some bird noises.
So, does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Ooh, man, these are like deep questions.
It's a
I feel like
multiverse.
it works well. I feel like you know what? I feel like if it's done well, it could be done either way, and it's sort of the way it's presented sort of becomes its own bit, right? Like, I mean, those comedians and those comics whose their stuff is super dry, and that's the point of it, right? And then there's the people that their stuff is super vivid. So I think it works for me. It works better when it's vivid, when it's painted vividly, and when it's delivered in a different way. I feel like that has to be called attention to, and that's sort of part of the bit, I guess.
Okay. All right. So here on the Comedians in Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous
Boy.
guest was Nicolette Nielsen. And her question for you, Eric, is who do you think is the most impactful comedian today?
Mm, that's a tough E. Um, the most impactful. Um, I feel like oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. I could see him in my head. I mean I love him. He's one of my favorites. What's his name? The goober from he got like kicked out of SNL. What's his name? What's his name? Um
The goober that came, I mean, isn't that,
I
I
feel like it
mean,
is. Maybe that doesn't narrow it down. I'm
who
gonna look it
got
up real
kicked?
quick because it's gonna drive me
Who got
crazy.
kicked out? What
Um
people got? Aren't they all
Shane
kicked out?
Gillis.
Like,
I
does it?
don't know why I blanked on his name. Shane
Oh,
Gillis.
okay.
I think Shane Gillis right now because when I think of all of this stuff like cancel culture and stuff and all of these towing these lines, like Shane has that experience with getting kicked out of SNL because of some of his other jokes and like that being too racy for that platform. But then he went on and did a bunch of other stuff, and then like he's towed those political lines because of that. There was like this whole thing where like everyone was like, "Oh yeah, he pisses off the left." He's like, "All right," but then he'll like get on stage and do a bunch of jokes about like that are like sort of like a blue collar man's version of wokeism, like making fun of
Mm.
like slavers and George Washington's slave teeth and stuff, which is not something you would see from like the people that were kind of celebrating his like more racial comedy. So like I feel like he kind of toes all of those lines. He's sort of like super accessible to everybody, like on all sides of the political aisle. He has that experience with the cancel stuff. Um, and he's very I don't know. I feel like he just seems like in the zeitgeist right now. People are like, oh, what would Shane Gillis say about this? Which is, I don't know, kind of crazy that comedy's got to that point. But I think Shane Gillis is probably like one of the bigger ones right now. Um,
So would you say that his him getting kicked out of SNL is because he transitioned or evolved from the comic into a comedian?
yeah, I think that he was, and I don't know if I wonder if it was like he didn't evolve per se. I think he was always that, and SNL was kind
Right,
of like you could fit like in here, but then because of some of his past stuff and like they were like, no, it would be
right.
too controversial. And then because of that, he was kind of like free to then just be himself. And then he like, did a bunch of stuff on YouTube that got super popular, and now he has his TV show and stuff. So I feel like, and he's hosted it a bunch of times since then. And I feel like it was like that was like the better fit was him to do his own thing, I
So
guess.
that's what I'm alluding to. Would you say that SNL is fit more for comics as opposed to comedians?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
because yeah, it's a different thing. It's like yeah, it's a different medium, a different venue. It's more for that. It lends itself more to that skill set than the other one.
All right. All right. Last question. Legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Type 5 survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Oh man, that's a toughie. I think when I think of it, I guess in aspects of that, I think the comedian, uh, because when I'm like just like with this question, I'm thinking about like the comedians, the comics, the jokes, the perspectives that I remember. I don't remember like specific setups and punchlines. I think of like vibes. Like I think of like the way I felt watching Carlin critique stuff. I think about the way like I felt when I watched like an old Richard Pryor thing, like talking about like race relations in the 70s. Like I can't think of a specific line, but I just think of the vibes and how that informs us going forward and stuff. So I think it's like the comedian and their cultural um vibes will live on more than a, like a Type 5, which, because those like Type 5 deliveries or those like 15s or whatever, like those become outdated. Those have a shelf life of like, I don't know, maybe 10 years because then it changes. Then you need to throw some crowd work in. And then they're like, no, I got to mess with the microphone because that's hot now. So I feel like that stuff becomes dated. But as your perspectives on your culture and the way we relate to our fellow humans is timeless, right?
All right. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Well, Eric, where can everybody find you online?
They can find me on I'm on Blue Sky. I don't really do much of that. Find me on Instagram at Eric LeJaguar. It's my name, EricLejaguar. Find me on Instagram. Come say hi. I wrote a satirical book called Let's Murder the Fuck Out of Baby Hitler. It's a time travel odyssey. You can find that on Amazon. It's super cheap. I'm not trying to make money off it. I'm trying to get it to go viral so that the screenplay version will get sold. So buy my book about murdering a baby fascist. And
I like it.
yeah, so that's my shit.
All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everybody, please like and subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.
Sweet. All right. Thank you, Keenan.
If you're interested in too much information like in the network state or Mantipus the chicken shit, check out this video. Or is it this one right here? Well, either way. Lizard